It sort of rehashed old revelations with a new twist. As it turns out, we've apparently been wrong all along. Britain is a nasty, racist hellhole where only magnificent Meghan stood up to all this, and the world's biggest victim.
The California dream is burning. Prince Harry is frantically packing his belongings in Montecito, preparing to flee the multi-million-dollar mansion that was supposed to represent freedom, peace, and a fresh start. But this isn't a casual visit to his homeland. This isn't about reconciliation or family healing. This is an escape, a desperate sprint toward institutional protection he once publicly rejected and ridiculed. The timing couldn't be more caucastaster. Just as Harry prepares his exit, Piers Morgan has released photographs that have sent shockwaves through both sides of the Atlantic. These aren't innocent vacation snapshots or harmless party pictures from Meghan Markle's past. These are yacht photos, images that document her presence in elite circles with disturbing connections to the world Jeffrey Epstein built and Ghislaine Maxwell controlled. The same social ecosystem that destroyed Prince Andrew's reputation and forced him into permanent exile from public life now threatens to consume Harry's carefully constructed California existence. And the prince who spent years burning every royal bridge is now racing back across the charred remains, seeking shelter in the very institution he called toxic, racist, and cruel. The Piers Morgan bombshell that changed everything. Piers Morgan has never been one to back down from controversy. But what he revealed in his recent interview went far beyond typical tabloid gossip. Sitting across from his interviewer with that trademark expression, the one that signals he's holding cards nobody else has seen, Morgan released information that triggered over 57,000 complaints to ITV. Thousands of people demanded his immediate termination for daring to question the Duchess of Sussex. The outrage machine kicked into overdrive with social media erupting in defense of Meghan. But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. Meghan Markle herself personally contacted Morgan's bosses behind the scenes, applying direct pressure to have him fired. Not through official channels, not through her high-powered PR team, but directly personally attempting to silence a journalist whose questions were becoming too uncomfortable to ignore. And yet, as Piers himself noted with barely concealed satisfaction, he remains resolutely uncanceled. Why? Because the evidence he's been methodically compiling for years is absolutely devastating, and it's only now beginning to see the light of day. The yacht photographs show Meghan in environments that matter deeply when viewed through the lens of subsequent events. We're looking at documented appearances at exclusive Soho House international openings, including one in Istanbul in 2015, where insiders describe her role as social filler. That term might sound dismissive, but it's actually quite functional. Social filler refers to attractive, personable individuals who populate rooms before the real power players arrive. People who make environments feel lively, warm, and inviting. It's a role that doesn't come with spotlights or public recognition, but it does come with access to rooms where cameras don't go and paper trails don't exist. International flights, luxury yacht appearances, constant movement through elite circles populated by billionaires, power brokers, and individuals whose wealth and influence operate far from public scrutiny. Not once or twice, but consistently, repeatedly, documented across multiple years and continents. The math that never added up. Here's where careful observers started noticing something strange. At the time these photographs were taken, Meghan Markle was a supporting actress on Suits, a cable television show with a dedicated but modest audience. She played a paralegal, a recurring role certainly, but hardly one that would command a Hollywood superstar salary. Industry. Insiders estimate her income during that period would have been comfortable, but nowhere near the level required for the lifestyle she was apparently living. A moderate six-figure salary from a cable show simply doesn't fund international travel on private jets, appearances on luxury yachts in the Mediterranean, accommodations at five-star hotels across Europe, and constant presence at exclusive events populated by the ultra-wealthy. The mathematical discrepancy is impossible to ignore. How does a working actress on a moderately successful cable show afford to live like a billionaire eyes? Where was the funding coming from? Who was facilitating this access to rarefied social circles that typically remained closed to anyone without either enormous wealth or exceptional connections? Piers Morgan connected that others noticed, but remained silent about. The lifestyle, the proximity to extreme wealth, the presence in rooms where powerful men relaxed, where boundaries blurred, where the normal rules of society seemed temporarily suspended. Nobody accused Meghan of crimes that would be inappropriate without evidence. Instead, people did something much quieter and potentially more dangerous. They remembered. They filed away observations, noted inconsistencies, and waited. Memory is patient. It doesn't demand immediate answers. It simply archives information, waiting for context that might arrive years later. And when that same woman from the yacht photos suddenly appeared beside a prince, wearing a title, waving from palace balconies, and becoming one of the most famous women on earth, those old memories suddenly gained explosive new relevance. The Ghislaine Maxwell factor. Ghislaine Maxwell is currently serving 20 years in a Florida federal prison. Her social empire has been completely destroyed. Her influence has evaporated. Her future is written in concrete walls and razor wire, and she will likely die behind bars.
Behind bars for her part in grooming young girls to sexually service Jeffrey Epstein and his friends.
And that's exactly what makes her so dangerous. Now, here's a fundamental truth about human behavior that prosecutors understand intimately. People stay quiet when silence still benefits them. When they still have friends who might help, when they still have leverage to negotiate, when they still have hope that their situation might improve. Ghislaine Maxwell has none of those things. Her former friends have abandoned her. Her wealth has been stripped away. Her freedom is gone. Her legacy is ruined, beyond any possibility of repair. She has absolutely nothing left to lose and potentially something to gain through cooperation. According to multiple sources with connections to federal investigators, Maxwell has started talking, not in vague hints or carefully worded suggestions, but in names. Real names, specific individuals who moved through the same elite social circles she once controlled alongside Jeffrey Epstein. The Soho House connection represents exactly where Meghan's world and Maxwell's world intersected during the critical years in question. Soho House wasn't simply a stylish private club for artists and creatives, though that was certainly its public F-facing image. Behind the scenes, these international locations served as infrastructure, creating corridors between worlds that don't typically mix openly. Hollywood met international finance. New money brushed shoulders with old aristocratic power. People who craved attention and publicity crossed paths with people who avoided cameras at all costs. These weren't random social gatherings. They were carefully curated environments designed to feel vibrant and alive precisely when powerful guests arrived. The right energy, the right faces in the room, the right mix of beauty, charm, and discretion. And Meghan Markle was flown internationally to be one of those faces filling rooms with exactly the atmosphere that made powerful men comfortable and generous. The Virginia Guppy connection. Here's where this story transitions from uncomfortable gossip to genuinely serious legal territory during the civil case brought by Virginia Jew, the woman whose testimony utterly destroyed Prince Andrew's public standing and forced him into permanent exile from royal duties. Meghan Markle's name nearly entered the courtroom. Not as a defendant. That critical distinction matters enormously, but as a potential witness. Witnesses aren't accused of crimes. They're simply people who may have seen something, heard something, or been present during moments that later became legally significant. According to court-related positioning that emerged during discovery, there were 3 specific reasons investigators considered calling Meghan for testimony. First, she lived in the United States, making jurisdiction straightforward without international legal complications. Second, she was described as a close associate of Prince Andrew during a specific time period that overlapped with alleged abuse. And third, she was said to have been present within Jeffrey Epstein's broader social environment during years when criminal activity was actively occurring. Ultimately, she wasn't called to testify. The case settled before that became necessary. But the damage wasn't in the outcome. It was in the fact that experienced federal investigators with subpoena power looked at Meghan's history and believed there was something substantive worth asking about under oath. You don't almost get called as a witness in a federal case involving sex trafficking and abuse unless investigators have concrete reasons to believe your testimony might be relevant. That near miss should have been a massive warning sign to anyone paying attention. Instead, it was quietly buried beneath the constant media coverage of royal wedding preparations and fairy tale romance narratives. Now, years later, as Ghislaine Maxwell talks from prison and Piers Morgan releases photographic documentation, that almost testimony suddenly looks like a bullet that was dodged temporarily but never truly avoided. Montecito, Paradise Lost. While the yacht scandal detonates across every media platform on both sides of the Atlantic, Montecito has simultaneously become completely uninhabitable for the Sussexes. This isn't just one problem. This is a catastrophic convergence of failures happening all at once, each feeding into and amplifying the others. The wealthy neighbors of Montecito have frozen Harry and Meghan out entirely. There are no invitations to local charity events. Dinner parties that once included them have quietly removed them from guest lists without explanation. The exclusive coffee shops and boutique stores that initially welcomed the famous couple have become uncomfortable spaces where Meghan reportedly feels judged rather than celebrated. One local source, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the situation perfectly. This community has actual celebrities who don't create international drama everywhere they go. We value privacy, discretion, and people who contribute positively to the community. The Sussexes brought cameras, controversy, and constant chaos. They're not welcome here anymore. The social exile is crushing, but the financial pressure is even worse. Netflix, the streaming giant that threw over $100 million at the couple in a deal that made global headlines, is effectively pulling the plug. Executives are furious that the promised content never materialized in any meaningful way. The documentary series turned into a complaint festival that alienated viewers rather than building the sympathetic audience Netflix expected. Subsequent projects either flopped spectacularly or stalled indefinitely in development hell. Industry insiders revealed that Netflix is essentially done giving Harry and Meghan additional chances, and the relationship has soured beyond any possibility of repair. One entertainment industry source put it brutally. The numbers don't lie, and Harry and Meghan simply aren't delivering the audience engagement or subscriber retention that Netflix expected for that kind of financial investment. They're basically poison to the brand. Now then, there's the Archwell Foundation staff exodus that reads like a case study and organizational disaster. 11 people, 11 experienced professionals who uprooted their lives to build what was supposed to be the Sussex empire, have abandoned ship in rapid succession. This includes James Holt, the executive director, who was featured prominently in their Netflix documentary and moved his entire family from the UK specifically to help build the Archwell vision. He lasted long enough to realize the operation was fundamentally unsalvageable before quietly departing. The head of public relations survived exactly 7 months before escaping. 7 months. In the nonprofit and PR world, that kind of rapid departure is always, without exception, a red flag screaming that the work environment is intolerable, the leadership is dysfunctional, or both. The financial pressure crushing the Sussexes is becoming impossible to ignore. That Montecito mansion cost $14 million to purchase. Property taxes alone run into 6 figures annually. Security costs several million dollars per year just to maintain the level of protection they believe they require. The lifestyle they've constructed requires constant substantial cash flow that simply isn't materializing anymore. Spotify already collapsed spectacularly, with executive Bill Simmons famously calling Harry and Meghan grifters on his podcast on the way out the door. Netflix is essentially done with them. Book deals and speaking engagements have dried up as public interest wanes and backlash intensifies. According to multiple sources, Meghan is actively researching escape locations. Texas has been mentioned repeatedly, with its lack of state income tax potentially appealing. Several European countries have been explored as possibilities, particularly those with favorable tax treaties and privacy protections for wealthy residents. She's desperate to flee the community that has so thoroughly rejected her. But here's the existential problem that geographic relocation cannot possibly solve. Piers Morgan's yacht photographs are now circulating globally across every media platform imaginable. And Ghislaine Maxwell's prison testimony doesn't care what state you live in, what country you move to, or how many lawyers you hire. The pregnancy controversy that won't die. As the yacht photographs circulate and questions about Meghan's past intensify with each passing day, Piers Morgan's previous allegations about pregnancy inconsistencies are resurfacing with devastating new weight. Because if the yacht story proves that Meghan constructed a carefully managed public image that doesn't match documented reality, what else has been theatrical production instead of truth? The pregnancy inconsistencies that Morgan identified years ago are now being re-examined by the public with fresh scrutiny, and the patterns are genuinely disturbing when viewed as a comprehensive whole rather than isolated incidents. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood outside the Lindo Wing Hospital mere hours after giving birth in heels, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, holding her newborns for the entire world to see. 3 separate occasions where she demonstrated complete transparency, honored royal tradition, and shared joyful moments with the public who supports the monarchy. Meghan, meanwhile, turned her pregnancy into a mystery novel where the plot changed dramatically with every chapter, creating confusion and suspicion where there should have been only celebration. One week, the baby bump was prominent, round, and undeniable. She cradled it constantly with both hands in that distinctive pose pregnant women recognize. She moved with exaggerated care, as though carrying precious cargo that might shatter with any sudden movement. Then, days later, sometimes within the same week, photographs would show the bump looking significantly smaller, flatter, positioned completely differently on her body. The movement patterns were even more revealing and impossible to explain with normal pregnancy progression. In some footage, Meghan walked gingerly, hands protectively wrapped around her stomach, every step deliberate and cautious. Then suddenly, in other appearances from virtually the same time period, she's climbing stairs quickly, pivoting with ease, bending down effortlessly, moving with zero visible physical restriction. We're not talking about gradual changes over the course of months as pregnancy naturally progresses. We're talking about dramatic differences within days, sometimes within hours. One public appearance shows a woman so heavily pregnant she can barely move comfortably. The very next day, she's practically doing gymnastics in 5-inch stiletto heels. According to claims that surfaced during the pregnancy and were never properly addressed or denied, internal royal scheduling documents began circulating among palace staff. These documents supposedly tracked Meghan's appointments and movements throughout the pregnancy for security and logistics purposes, as a standard protocol for working royals. The problem? Hospital appointments were allegedly logged on specific days when Meghan was photographed by multiple independent sources attending public events. Clear across London. Not close timing that could be explained by efficient scheduling. Entire days where official paperwork indicated she was in one location, while photographic evidence from numerous sources placed her somewhere completely different. You cannot be in 2 places simultaneously. Pregnancy timelines aren't flexible or subject to interpretation. Either the documents were fabricated for unknown reasons, or the public appearances were staged with someone else while Meghan attended medical appointments secretly. Neither option makes logical sense or reflects well on anyone involved. Then came the detail that made even casual observers who had defended Meghan start questioning the official narrative. The home birth promise that vanished without explanation. Meghan had carefully shared through trusted palace insiders that she wanted an intimate home birth at Frogmore Cottage. Natural, personal, rejecting the cold rigidity of hospital protocols and media circuses. The public accepted this completely reasonable preference without question. Many women choose home births, and there seemed to be nothing suspicious about the decision. Then May 6, 2019 arrived. Suddenly, without a single word of explanation or clarification, Meghan gave birth at the exclusive Portland Hospital in London instead. Not at home, not at the publicly announced location, at a completely different hospital that had never been mentioned in any prior statement. No explanation was offered. Not one sentence from Palace Communications about why plans changed. No mention of medical complications that would naturally require hospital facilities. No statement acknowledging the change in plans that had been so publicly established. Just deafening suspicious silence that made people start re-examining every previous statement and questioning how much of the carefully constructed story had ever been truthful. The Andrew parallel that terrifies Harry. Prince Harry understands exactly what happened to Prince Andrew because he watched it systematically destroy his uncle in real time, removing him permanently from public life and royal duties. Andrew didn't lose his standing because of tabloid gossip or media speculation or unverified allegations. He lost everything. His titles, his patronages, his military affiliations, his public role, his reputation because of sworn testimony. Because once Virginia Joffrey's allegations were made under oath, once photographs were authenticated, once victims spoke in depositions that created permanent legal records, the fairy tale of the respectable prince collapsed instantly and completely. That's how scandals actually end in the legal world. Not with inflammatory headlines that fade from memory. Not with PR statements carefully crafted by expensive lawyers. But with records, with depositions, with testimony given under penalty of perjury that creates permanent documentation no publicist can ever erase. Andrew became the cautionary example that royal families study when things go catastrophically wrong. The proof that institutional silence and legal maneuvering can protect you for years, sometimes decades, until suddenly it can't. Until one person speaks under oath, and the entire carefully constructed shield shatters irrevocably. The parallel between Andrew's situation and Harry's current crisis is absolutely terrifying, and Harry understands it better than anyone. Both are royals connected to Epstein circles through documented social proximity and associations. Both were present in environments where boundaries blurred and powerful people operated without meaningful oversight or accountability. Andrew was specifically named in Virginia's sworn testimony, creating a legal record that will exist permanently regardless of any settlement or legal maneuvering. Meghan was nearly called as a witness in that exact same case. The same legal proceedings that destroyed Andrew almost pulled Meghan onto the witness stand to answer questions about who was present when and what she observed. The same case, the same victims, the same legal framework, the same investigative team with subpoena power and access to evidence the public has never seen. Harry knows the royal institution possesses tools and resources that California publicists, no matter how expensive or well-connected, will never possess. Lawyers who specialize in making problems shrink quietly rather than explode publicly. Professional fixers with centuries of institutional knowledge passed down through generations. Ancient protocols designed specifically to contain scandals before they reach courtrooms where records become permanent and testimony creates documentation that never disappears. The royal system knows how to absorb inconvenient pasts and make them functionally irrelevant. History provides multiple examples that Harry has certainly studied carefully. Look at Princess Sofia of Sweden, who has well-documented history in glamour modeling and alleged proximity to Epstein-linked environments as early as 2005. Once she became royal through marriage, that past didn't magically disappear. But it absolutely stopped being discussed in mainstream media or polite society. Look at Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway, who publicly apologized in 2019 for maintaining a social friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The apology happened, received brief media coverage, and then the story closed. The institution moved forward, and the princess continues in her royal role without that association, defining her public image. But here's the critical difference that's driving Harry's obvious panic and desperate flight back to London. Those institutional tools and protective mechanisms work before testimony begins, not after. Once federal investigators start formally asking questions under oath, once depositions are officially scheduled, once subpoenas are issued through proper legal channels, no amount of palace protocol or royal influence can put that genie back in the bottle. The question that haunts everything. The question towering over this entire situation. The question that appears to be haunting Prince Harry as he frantically abandons Montecito and flees back toward institutional protection is devastatingly simple. What did you know about your wife's past, and when did you know it? If Harry knew about the yacht appearances, if he knew about the Epstein proximity, if he was aware of the elite party circuits and the questions surrounding how an actress on a cable show afforded that lifestyle, and he actively helped conceal or minimize that information, then he's complicit in a cover-up that makes him legally vulnerable and morally compromised in ways that could destroy whatever remains of his public standing. If he didn't know, if he married blindly, failed to conduct proper due diligence, or was deliberately misled about the woman he was bringing into the royal family, then he walked catastrophically into a disaster that now threatens to consume everything he built in California and potentially his relationship with his children and his remaining family connections. Either way, the fairy tale is definitively over. Either way, he needs the institutional protection he spent years publicly calling toxic, racist, and irredeemably cruel. The institution he accused of driving his mother to her death. The system he claimed nearly destroyed his mental health. The family, he said, showed no compassion or support during his darkest moments. That same institution is now his only possible shield against what's coming. And he knows it. That's why he's running. That's why Montecito is being abandoned. That's why the California dream that was supposed to represent freedom and authenticity is burning to the ground while he flees. The deafening silence. The evidence stack has become impossible for any reasonable person to ignore. Piers Morgan's yacht photographs showing Meghan in elite circles with documented connections to Epstein's social network. Ghislaine Maxwell's prison testimony naming individuals who were present in those environments. Harry's panicked flight back toward UK institutional protection. The pregnancy inconsistencies that were never adequately explained. The pre-written birth announcements planned like corporate product rollouts rather than joyful family moments. The timing fiasco at Buckingham Palace where the official announcement chaos made the entire institution look incompetent. The complete staff exodus from Archewell that suggests working for the Sussexes is professionally intolerable. And through it all, one element stands out as potentially most damning. The deafening silence in response to every single specific allegation. Meghan's response to all of this has been absolutely nothing. No carefully worded statements from her legal team. No spokesperson issuing clarifications or context. No celebrity friends rushing to her defense with personal testimonials. No legal threats against Piers Morgan or the media outlets amplifying these questions. Nothing. For someone who historically sued newspapers over unflattering stories about her relationship with her father, who had close friends anonymously brief, sympathetic journalists in her favor constantly, who personally called Piers Morgan's bosses attempting to have him fired for asking uncomfortable questions. This silence is absolutely devastating because in the court of public opinion, silence like this doesn't read as dignity or taking the high road. It reads as inability to deny. It reads as avoidance of questions that have real uncomfortable answers. In the minds of millions watching this unfold, it reads exactly like guilt. Harry's response has been even more damning, physically running back to the institution he spent years publicly dismantling and humiliating. The man who built his entire post-royal identity around protecting his family from false narratives and media persecution is saying absolutely nothing as specific. Detailed allegations about his wife's past circulate globally across every platform imaginable. If someone was spreading demonstrable lies about your wife's connection to Epstein circles, wouldn't you be the very first person demanding retractions? Wouldn't you unleash your lawyers immediately? Wouldn't you defend your partner's honor? Loudly and publicly, but there's nothing, just silence and a flight back to London and the institutional lawyers who know exactly how to make inconvenient scandals disappear quietly. The reckoning. The pattern is now absolutely clear to anyone paying attention. When powerful people suddenly stop talking and start running, truth is hunting them. When yacht photos meet prison testimony, when photographic evidence aligns with investigator interest from years earlier, when financial collapse coincides with complete social exile, the fairy tale doesn't just crack, it shatters completely and irreparably. Harry either knew about Meghan's past and helped actively conceal it, making him complicit in a cover-up that could have legal ramifications, or he didn't know, and was catastrophically deceived into a marriage that's now threatening everything he walked away from his family to build. There is no third option that makes this situation less dire. The institution might protect Harry because he's blood royal, because he's Charles's son, William's brother, Diana's child, because protecting him protects the crown and the continuation of the monarchy itself. But Meghan, the crown, has a centuries-long history of sacrificing outsiders to protect itself and the bloodline that matters above all else. And right now, as Harry abandons Montecito and Piers Morgan releases evidence that becomes more damaging with each revelation, it's becoming crystal clear that the reckoning isn't approaching sometime in the distant future. It's already here. It's happening in real time as the world watches. The only question remaining is whether anyone survives it intact when Ghislaine Maxwell finishes talking from her prison cell and when testimony potentially begins in legal proceedings that could pull more names into the permanent record. Because once words are spoken under oath, they don't stay behind closed doors for long. Those records become discoverable, quotable, usable in future cases and investigations. And when that happens, when the testimony is given, when the names are named, when the documentation becomes part of official legal proceedings, no amount of running to different states or countries, no geographic relocation to Texas or Europe, no institutional protection from ancient royal protocols can erase what's already been documented, photographed, investigated, and remembered by people with subpoena power. The yacht photos exist. The proximity to Epstein's world is documented. The investigator interest from the Virginia Jew case is part of the historical record. Maxwell is talking. The walls are closing in from every direction simultaneously. And Prince Harry, who once stood confidently beside his wife and declared they would build a better life, free from institutional constraints and media persecution, is frantically packing his bags and fleeing back to the very institution he spent years destroying, hoping the crown will protect him from the consequences of choices that are now coming due. The California dream is over. The fairy tale has shattered. And the question that will define the next chapter of this story is simple. When the testimony begins, whose names get spoken under oath? And who gets sacrificed to protect the crown? Will Harry and Meghan's relationship survive this mounting pressure? Can the royal institution protect them both? Or will someone be sacrificed? What happens when Maxwell finishes naming names? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for updates as this story continues to develop. The truth is emerging, and it's more explosive than anyone imagined.